see you, my dear viewers, at my YouTube channel, and this is Mirolim with you today with some hot news. On the top of today's rubric, PepsiCo's catastrophic case with its can of Diet Pepsi, where namely in June 10, 1993, a first syringe was allegedly found in a can of Diet Pepsi. By the following week, more than 50 reports of Diet Pepsi tampering had been reported across 23 states. But despite these consumer fears, PepsiCo refused to recall all of its Diet Pepsi products from the store shelves. Because both PepsiCo and FDA, that is Food and Drug Administration, were confident that these reports were nothing more than hoaxes. What did they do instead? PepsiCo instead decided to fight the media crisis with media itself. They decided to assemble their own crisis team and chose Craig Weatherup, who was a Pepsi-Cola North America president and CEO, to become their spokesperson because of his familiarity of the entire bottling system. Mr. Weatherup was made available for all interviews and constantly furnishing news media with visuals and anything else that would show the bottling process was absolutely safe. Through effective communications, including visible support from the FDA, as well as a little bit of luck, PepsiCo was able to declare the incident over less than 2 weeks after it began.
On June 10, 1993, a complaint was filed by a consumer in Tacoma, Washington, that he had found a hypodermic needle inside a Diet Pepsi can. A second complaint was filed in the same area the next day. Although PepsiCo executives were concerned that these reports could be false, they nevertheless investigated the complaint with their regional bottler, that is Alpac Corporation. Meanwhile, the FDA announced that the syringes were not contaminated and issued a statement that consumers in the Pacific Northwest, Alaska and Hawaii should pour canned drinks into a glass prior to drinking, just to be safe. At the same time, however, the FDA also reminded individuals that making false complaints carried a maximum penalty of a $250,000 fine and 5 years in prison. When a third tampering report was filed on June 13, this one in New Orleans, PepsiCo realized that this was becoming a national media story. That was the bad news. The good news was that PepsiCo was positive that the reports were hoaxes. There was no way that so many cans of soda could have been contaminated in the same way at bottlers all over the country over a period of months, only to be discovered at the same time. PepsiCo made the risky decision to not recall any of their products. Instead, they set out to prove to their constituencies that these allegations were false. The time when these all inconsistencies happened, PepsiCo was experiencing their peak sales season going from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Just as luck would have it, news media was creating panic among PepsiCo's constituencies by frequently displaying a visual of a Diet Pepsi can, with a hypodermic needle standing next to it, bringing to mind AIDS and hepatitis, and yeah, that's pretty scary. Of course, just imagine, how could you dare to drink from a plastic-labeled can where literally nothing can be seen inside of it? And so original public fear had grown into something more, so-called public panic. According to Argenti, in a crisis situation, the first step a company must take is to define the real problem and then set the communication objectives to handle it. When the first two complaints of syringes found in Diet Pepsi cans were reported in Washington state, PepsiCo considered it a regional issue. PepsiCo's local management worked with their regional bottler to check the product line while the FDA tested the syringes for contamination. When a third syringe was reported, this one in New Orleans, PepsiCo realized that this was becoming a national issue and assembled their crisis team. PepsiCo determined that it was almost impossible that these tampering reports could be genuine. The real problem was how to stop the false reports and how to communicate to the public that there was no danger. A company's reaction to a crisis must be based on a thorough understanding of the problem. Rebecca Madeira, Vice President of Public Affairs, became the crisis coordinator for the Diet Pepsi emergency. Her immediate concern was to determine whether or not the public was at risk. Once the FDA had tested the first two syringes and found that there was no risk of contamination, PepsiCo and the FDA together decided there was no need for a product recall. In the meantime, PepsiCo researched employee records, shipping and customer inventories, and consumer complaints to see if there were any indicators that their production lines could have been subverted in any way. Based on their research and on the statistical improbability of such tampering occurring in numerous bottling plants over the span of several months, management and employees at PepsiCo were confident that the syringes reportedly found in their soda cans were not the result of product tampering but of fraudulent complaints. Larry L. Smith, president of the Institute for Crisis Management, tells his clients to think of media not as the audience, but as the pipeline to reach the audience. The media was creating a panic among consumers with its sensationalized display of a dyed Pepsi can with a syringe. PepsiCo's crisis team understood that they had to use this same media to deliver their own message to consumers, that they had determined with 99.999% certainty that the syringes could not have been inserted in a production line that fills thousands of cans per minute. PepsiCo's media messages were so effective that by Wednesday night, one day after Mr. Weather's first television appearances, crisis team members noticed that news reports were beginning to use words such as copycat and hoax when reporting new tampering cases. Prompt communication in a crisis is critical to calming consumers' panic. A corporation spokesperson must communicate as soon as possible and must issue updates at regular intervals to all of their constituencies. Once the decision had been made to use the television media to communicate to their constituencies about the crisis, PepsiCo immediately went on the offensive. On Tuesday, June 15, PepsiCo asked one of their vendors, Robert Chung Productions, to produce a video news release showing the soda canning process. The video showed how each can was inverted, cleaned with pressurized water or oil, and then flipped again immediately filled with soda, all in less than 1 second. The first video was viewed the same day by 187 million viewers on 403 stations. All in all, PepsiCo produced 4 videos during the crisis, including the first one showing the soda canning process. But the most powerful video was created using surveillance footage from a Colorado retailer which showed a woman inserting a syringe into a can of Diet Pepsi as the store clerk looked away. All of these videos were very effective in convincing consumers that the tampering reports were hoaxes. FDA arrests of individuals accused of filing false reports reinforced PepsiCo's affirmations. PepsiCo also made Mr. Weatherup available for interviews with the news media. On Tuesday, he appeared on several evening news broadcasts, including the McNeil and Nightline, with Ted Koppel quietly explaining how a syringe could not possibly find its way into a can. Mr. Weatherup was joined on Nightline by FDA Commissioner David Kessler, presenting a powerful message to consumers as both men assured the public that the tampering reports were unsubstantiated and that PepsiCo's products were safe. The following morning, Mr. Weatherup appeared on several early morning network shows as well. In addition to their efforts in the mass media, PepsiCo also kept other lines of communication open during the crisis. PepsiCo sent faxes to all of its regional bottlers twice daily to keep them apprised of any developments, and PepsiCo employees continued to respond to calls made to the company toll-free line from consumers, bottlers, and distributors. Within 11 days, the Diet Pepsi crisis was over. The FDA had made several arrests for filing false tampering reports, and there had been no substantiated cases of contaminated soft drinks. PepsiCo wanted to thank their constituencies for supporting them throughout the crisis, and to officially declare the crisis over. From June 19 to June 21, PepsiCo ran ads in national newspapers declaring Pepsi is pleased to announce nothing. On the weekend of the 4th of July, PepsiCo printed coupons and newspaper ads that said, "Thanks America." In all, sales of Pepsi and Diet Pepsi were reported to have dropped about 2% during the crisis but rebounded after the 4th of July. So that's the end for our today's rubric, and thank you for your listening and thank you for your attention, and if you like, don't forget to subscribe on our channel to always get updated.